Hey there, and welcome to Go Far Girl, the podcast where women share the stories that changed them one journey at a time. I'm your host, Chantel. I'm a travel writer and a lifelong wanderer, and I believe that every mile we travel brings us closer to the strongest, boldest, most authentic versions of ourselves. Each week, I'll sit down with incredible women to talk about the trips that shaped them, the lessons they learned along the way, and the power of going far in every sense of the word. So grab your coffee, your journal, or your carry-on, and let's dive in. Hi, good afternoon. Thanks for joining us today on Go Far Girl. Today I'm here with Annalaura Brown, and she is the host of the podcast Autoimmune Rehab. She's an autoimmune thriver. She loves traveling the world and is always seeking new adventures. Her experiences, especially her time in France, have taught her how to slow down, savor life, and embrace travel with courage and joy. Her story inspires women to stop waiting for the perfect moment and just go. And that's what inspired me to want to share her story with you, is just that spirit of resilience and the always pushing forward and coming up with new ways to make travel work for her. So welcome, Annalaura. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, sure. Of course. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your background, how you got started in travel, and sort of how that's evolved through time?
For sure, absolutely. Yeah. So I grew up living in a different state from a lot of the family members of both of my parents. My mom had grown up in California and had a lot of extended family in California. Then her parents and a couple of her siblings had moved back to Utah when she was in high school. So she had some family in Utah where I grew up and where I actually still live today. But my dad's family was all from Nebraska and Iowa. So in order for us to really go visit a lot of the extended family, we had to either drive one way to the Midwest or drive one way the other way. And I'm the first of 8 kids, so we have a really large family. So flying was not in the budget.
Right.
Although a lot of the initial driving, I was 16 when my baby brother was born too. So there were not 8 kids initially. There were, anywhere from 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 at one point, but we just did a lot of road trips.
I bet.
Several road trips to go visit the family. So that was how we initially started traveling. The first time that I remember going on an airplane, now I know my parents have told me that they took me on an airplane a couple of times when I was a baby, and then maybe also with my sister when, there were just 2 kids before there were more kids, and then flying just wasn't feasible or, cost
I can't
effective.
even imagine putting 8 kids on a plane, even not even just the cost, but like the chaos of it. I just see.
Well, and to this day, I have never flown with all of my family. The entire
Okay.
family and all the kids, we've never been on an airplane together
Oh,
because it's just too costly
it's
and
still too much. Yeah.
too much. So, yeah. So but anyhow, that started the whole idea with the road trips. And then the first time I really remember going on a plane was when my grandma, who did live in Utah, flew me at 10 years old to California. And we did a whole trip where we rented a car once we got there. We drove and did a whole basically visited almost the whole state of California, from
How cool.
Sacramento all the way down through the LA area and Oakland and a bunch of stuff. And that was just, it was really fun. And then, as I got to be older in high school and other things like that, I started doing more trips, got to start flying on different trips, and just started having just this desire to want to go out and see the world. And then I feel like in 2001, when, right around the time of 9/11, ironically, when The Amazing Race, which is the reality TV show where you race around the world for $1 million, which I'm sure
Yeah.
you've probably seen that.
Ew, I love that show.
That TV show came out, I have to say that probably sparked even more of a desire to travel, because I would see things on the show and be like, I want to go see that,
We
and
actually, I don't want to interrupt you, but we actually planned our whole trip last year to Austria and Slovenia based off of an episode of The Amazing Race, because we were watching it and we were like, we want to go to all these places. And so we just stole the itinerary and did it.
yeah, oh, that's cool. Yeah, so I had done some travel, a little international travel. I'd actually even made my first trip to France before that TV show came out in 99 and 2000. But I had not really done, too much international travel before that. And part of that was, it was a phase of life I was in. I didn't have money. I was a student,
Sure,
different things
sure.
like that. But that show definitely sparked the interest in wanting to start developing a bucket list and start traveling a lot more. And so, as a now I have been to about 8 different countries, I think 8 or 9 different countries. So, still haven't been to, a huge amount of countries. I hope that by the time I hit retirement age, I will have at least doubled that or maybe even tripled it. And then, maybe hopefully I'm still in good enough health in retirement that I'm able to travel even more. So
I
we'll
know
see
we
how
always
that
gotta
goes.
be looking forward, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
So how have your autoimmune issues, affected when you travel? Did you have those when you were a kid? Did you know about them? And then kind of how has that changed what you have to
Yeah,
do
so
when
I
you're
didn't
planning?
know I had it. So it's Hashimoto's primarily is my main autoimmune, which for people that aren't familiar with it affects your thyroid, can really give you a lot of fatigue.
Mhm.
Can Some people will have pain issues, other things like that, digestive issues, stuff like that. I didn't know I had it till 2018. So I had already been and done some international travel before I actually knew I had it. I had some pretty bad symptoms for a few years before that, though. And during the time, that initial time, I really didn't do a lot of travel, primarily because I just felt like I couldn't.
You were just so
So,
exhausted.
once when you get hit initially with that autoimmune, the first few years for a lot of people, while they're trying to balance, they're trying to figure out, what do I do? How do I take care of my health? It can be challenging to do that much travel. And I know I really hardly did any travel at all. I mean, in fact, I'm trying to think if I think I did do during the time where I was still pretty sick, but yet didn't actually know what I have. I think I did do one trip where I think we drove. Yeah, we did drive because it was a family trip and we went to California for a family reunion. But other than that, I'm trying to think if I really, I don't know that I did much travel at all for a few years. And now I'm more or less into remission. I'm feeling a lot better. I have a lot more energy. I'm able to do a lot more. And so I'm able to, thank goodness, be able to do the travel because, went through a phase in life where I really couldn't.
Yeah.
And even now I have to be really careful just because that I can definitely overdo it and I can definitely end up coming home sick. So the last time I went on a big trip, I was in Europe for almost the whole month of December, visited total of about 5 countries in a month. And I was sick for the whole month of January because I came home and my brother had whatever was going around. It was like they said it wasn't the flu. They said it wasn't COVID. It was some viral thing or whatever that was hitting people.
Yeah.
And I got exposed. And because my immune system was a little weaker, I got sick. And yeah, I was sick for almost a month after. So the other thing I also have to do is, to work on, trying to help my immune system before and after travel. But I also have to kind of just be realistic and realize that, hey, there's a good chance I might get sick when I come home. So I need to prepare myself for that when it comes to the rest of my life, working and whatever. Yeah.
Does it make you a little more intentional with planning like a slower itinerary, scheduling in some rest days and things like that
Yes.
rather than being
Mhm,
on
it
the
does.
go?
Absolutely, yeah. I definitely don't am not the kind of traveler that's gonna try to plan to go visit, 3 different big things all in one day, which personally, I think that's kinda dumb anyway. Autoimmune condition or not, you shouldn't really be trying to run all over one country and trying to see everything you can possibly see at once. I
Yeah,
try to
that's more
have the
just like
mentality
checking
of
off a list than traveling, right? Like, you're not
yeah,
getting
exactly.
the
I try to have the
experience.
mentality that I'm glad I get to be here. I'm grateful I get to be here. Hopefully, I get to come back.
Yeah.
I mean, you never know for sure that I'll get to come back to that place. So I try to pick, really the main key things that it's like, okay, if this is the only time I'm coming here, what are the main things I absolutely have to see and go after making sure I see those key things and anything else that I get to see is gravy, or it's the
Yeah.
cherry on the sundae, however you
Yeah.
wanna put it.
That's such a good tip. I think that everyone needs to have that reminder because sometimes, and I'm guilty of it too, I'll be looking at itinerary and I'll be like, well, I'm already right here. I should probably just go to Switzerland. I mean, if I'm close to Switzerland, I should probably just go here, and I just will start, and then I'll like have to like rein myself in and be like, calm down. Like you have to, because otherwise you're just exhausted and running from place to place, like you said, and not actually like having any experiences. So how did France become your standout place? Did you start in
Well,
Paris? did
So I
you?
started going to learning French at the age of 4 at a private immersion school. So I had started learning French. I had teachers that were native French speakers that were from France. My one of my aunts had majored in French in college and had lived in a dorm where you were only allowed to speak French, and her roommate was a native French speaker, and she became almost kind of like a second aunt to me almost. And so I grew up around several French people and studying French. And so going to France had been on my bucket list for quite some time. So it was kind of already, at the top of my list. Also, have always really wanted to go visit, like England and Wales and, all of the UK because that's where a lot of my ancestry comes from. So that's been a really big bucket list as well. As of right now, Scotland is the only place on the UK that I've actually been.
Did you
I
love
haven't
it?
made it to the rest of the UK yet, but France just really stood out. And so I had a goal to go there, and I have been there 4 times now, I think. And one of those times was doing a study abroad in college.
Okay. And so do you go to the same city in France every time you go? Are you checking out different areas of the
I
country?
try to check out some different areas. I do end up going to some of the same cities. I mean, everybody pretty much knows that you're going to see some of Paris every time you go because you basically have to fly into Paris,
Right.
pretty much. I mean, you could fly into Nice, but that can be more complicated, can take longer. I haven't personally ever flown into Nice. I have flown home from Nice before though, where I like went and flew into Paris and then went around, traveled around, and then flew home from Nice because I was already down in southern France.
That's a nice
But
way
yeah,
to do it though. Yeah.
I have some friends that live in France. I know some French people that I'm pretty close to. So I sometimes will spend a little bit of time in some of the same cities, but a lot of times, yeah, I am setting a goal to try to visit some other places. So, like, the next time I go, my goal is to do southwestern France because
Okay.
I've done a lot of southeastern, like, over by Italy. So, Cannes and Antibes and Marseille and Nice and, all of that side. But I want to do like Toulouse and Carcassonne and Montpellier and,
Oh,
that other southwestern side. So, that's the main new region that I plan to visit in France the next time I go there.
what's your favorite region so far?
I would say, oh, it's hard. I really like Normandy actually, and I like Normandy more than I like Paris. I'm not really a huge Paris person. People, it's fine. Paris is fine. There are things in Paris that you really need to go see. Let's put it this way. It's just they're must lists. Like everybody needs to at least go experience what the Eiffel Tower's like. You got to see the Louvre. You got to just see some of those key things. But I feel like once you've seen some of those things, it's kind of like too loud and noisy, too many tourists, too many people, too crowded,
Yeah. It's
just
just a
not
big
really
city.
for me.
Yeah.
And I also like the center, like near Tours with all the castles and things like that. When I did my study abroad, that's where I went. So I would go to school in the morning and then I could take off on the train and go visit castles in the afternoon. It was really cool.
What a life. That's is something
I know.
else. That's a good way to break up the monotony of studying.
Yeah, it was for sure.
So if you had to recommend one place in France for like a solo women's trip, where would you send them? You think to the
I would
Normandy?
say, assuming you've already been to Paris, if you haven't
Mhm.
been to Paris at all, going to at least check out Paris for a little bit is worth your while. But assuming that other than that, I would say, yeah, somewhere in Normandy. There's a lot to see in Normandy. Even though I've been there a couple of times now, I haven't been anywhere close to everywhere in Normandy. But, Normandy, I would also say it's also going to depend on how much time you have because the south of France and the beaches is beautiful. There's a lot to see down there too. And of course, the center with the castles. But, it really depends on how much time you've got. If you've really only got your typical like 7 days, like most people have, I would say maybe like 2 days in Paris if you haven't been there already, 2 to 3 days, and then go spend the rest of it in Normandy probably for one trip. And
Yeah.
then you can go back and check out Southern on a separate trip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's smart. What would you say to women who are nervous? I mean, everyone, not everyone has Hashimoto's, but everyone kind of, most people do have something that they're always in the back of their head when they are planning a trip. And so I think you kind of touched on it a little bit by being prepared ahead of time and kind of monitoring your schedule. But what about those women that are just really like letting something within themselves hold them back? What would your advice be? How did you get to that point where you're like, look, I know I have this, but I'm still doing it because this is what I love? Like,
I would say the biggest thing is have a big why and actually really evaluate, do you really want to go? Because if you really want to go, you're going to get your butt out of the couch or the bed or whatever, and you're just going to get to the airport and do it. I
Yes.
mean, if you're not, and if something's really holding your back and you're really not going out there and doing it, you really need to evaluate, do you really want to do it? Because if there's really no reason to not do it if you really want to. And the thing is, yeah, it's going to cost money, but at the end of the day, the way that things are at the moment with Europe and the way that prices have increased on a lot of things, what people sometimes don't realize is they can be just as cheap or maybe even cheaper to go to Europe on a trip than it is to go like to Disneyland or Walt Disney World.
I know, I've noticed that, that's crazy. Yeah.
And it's really not like dangerous or anything as long as you're in like the major tour cities and things. You don't go off the beaten path too much and you use extra common sense. I would definitely say with France, if you're going to do anything other than Paris, you definitely want to know some French too. So that's really going to be key. If you really don't speak any French at all, then and you're over there as a solo woman, then Paris might be all that you can do. That or maybe Nice too, but
That's a good
yeah,
tip.
because they're still in France. There's not. I mean, there are and there aren't a lot of English speakers. Like with tour, in the main tour sites and things like that, you won't have any trouble in like the hotels and things like that. But outside of that, just you can't just assume that your average everyday person is going to speak English. So
Good tip. Good tip. Did you find that people were unfriendly to you in Paris? I know that's kind of a rap that they have, and that people sometimes don't want to go because they're like afraid that people don't want them there. Did you experience that while you were in
yeah,
Paris?
but I also speak French too, though, so it wasn't really that big a deal. But yeah, I mean, you do have to be really careful with pickpockets and scammers and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, you're going to encounter a little of that in every major tourist city, really.
Yeah, I think so too. I remember thinking a lot of that in Athens and Rome as well. Naples, I didn't really feel that's probably the place I felt the least safe as a solo woman is in Naples for some reason. Um,
Interesting.
it just bothered me. I just, like sometimes it just feels off and I just did not enjoy
Mm,
that.
yeah,
But I think what you're saying is just being aware. And I think with the French, it's always a good idea, no matter where you're going, to learn a couple words, right? Even if you're not going to be fluent, you can put your effort forth. You're visiting their country. You shouldn't expect everyone to adapt to you. You should at least have a good enough foundation to make an effort. And then hopefully they'll make an effort back, and somewhere in the middle you can meet and have a decent experience.
absolutely, for sure. Yeah. And like I said, it's going to vary from country to country, but the French are actually known for not really being that great at English. They really like their French. And
Yeah,
so,
because it's superior and
yeah,
I do
exactly.
love it. I took 4 years of French in high school, but unfortunately, unlike you, I didn't have people around me that also spoke it. And so you just tend to lose that stuff when you're not kind of immersed in it and using it. So I can read really well, and I can write it, but I get kind of flustered when people are speaking quickly, and then I'm trying to come up with an instant response. But if I have like time to think about it, I could do it.
Yeah, for
It's not
sure.
on the
Yeah, that's
fly. I'm like, "Hold on, give me 5 minutes, I'll respond."
yeah, yeah, that's always tricky
So,
for sure.
my sister had lived in, Chile for 18 months when she was younger, and so she got really fluent in Spanish, and so when my boys were young and she came back home, I had her babysit them for the whole summer, and I said, "Don't you dare speak English to these children." Like, sh they know not a drop of Spanish, but you just speak to them in Spanish the entire time and, like, basically force it on them because I know it's so important, and when you're younger, it's so much easier, and so the first couple days, they would say, "Mom, Aunt Jamie is acting so weird to us. She is so weird. She doesn't even know how to talk to us." And I said, "Well, then you're gonna have to learn how to talk to her." And so by the time the summer was over, they were having good little conversations. So
That's awesome. Yeah, I definitely feel like I was definitely lucky, getting the early exposure to French. And yeah, funny story. I was in college and I couldn't pass calculus, which is required for both a business major and a business minor. And so I already knew French pretty well. This is after my first big trip to France, and I decided to major in French instead, and I still needed a minor, and I couldn't do business because I couldn't do the math. So I decided on a whim to minor in Spanish, even though I had never even taken a single Spanish class.
What?
So I started Spanish in college at Spanish 101 and went all the way up to do a Spanish minor. And the only way I felt like I could do it was to do study abroad. So I actually did study abroad to Chile too. So I've done study
Okay.
abroad twice.
That's amazing. Yeah, it's such a good way to do it, just to be kind of thrown into that environment with no choice. I find that French and Spanish have a lot of the same root words. You know, so sometimes that can help because I can relate something to it, to Spanish or French based
You
off of whichever
do,
one I
but
remember at
it's
the time.
tricky
But
because of all your like it's still like the pronunciation's pretty different and even some of the verb tenses and things in French and
I was
Spanish
just
are
gonna
pretty
say
different. So
conjugating is
it's like,
always yeah.
yeah.
That's the craziest. So did you
Yeah.
use your French and Spanish out in your job or your real life after that, or
I
basically for
have
travel?
to some degree, not a ton necessarily. So I've had a couple of different careers, but currently now I'm in SaaS. So that's like, like your sales of tech. And I
Okay.
actually work for a company that produces a platform that is sold to travel agents and tour operators. So we're in
Oh,
the
that's
travel
cool.
space. I work in the travel space. And I use the French occasionally because I do cover Canada. So occasionally I'll get like Quebec leads that don't speak the greatest English and I'll end up
Yeah,
speaking to them in French. But I don't use it a ton really.
yeah.
No.
Well, it's good you can still depend on it to pull out when you need it.
Yeah, for
That's
sure.
Where's your
Absolutely.
next trip? Are you going back to France?
I am actually going to Italy in a week and a half from the day of this
Oh!
recording with my work. My work is doing a trip in Sicily for the entire company.
Nice. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
So it's
So,
going to be pretty cool. I'm
a
pretty
free trip
stoked.
is a better trip too. That's amazing.
Yeah, exactly. So I have that, then I'm doing a couple stateside trips this summer and fall, but I'm not doing any big, like, Europe trips other than the Italy trip. I'm planning on I have already booked it and, unless there's some major crazy thing that happens, I'm planning on doing a cruise that goes to Spain, Portugal, and Morocco in June of 2026. So
Amazing.
that's gonna be my big trip for next year.
I
So,
love that. What cruise line are you going on? Is that Norwegian?
celebrity celebrity.
Celebrity. Nice. Yeah. They do,
Yeah.
the Mediterranean cruises like that. They're just so pretty. And we did one, oh my gosh, I did one last year. It was 12 days, 11 ports. I don't know what I was thinking.
Wow.
Because it was just chaotic, but every port we were like, "Well, we have to go because this is amazing." Luckily, I say luckily, it's funny, there was a storm where we couldn't dock for 2 days, and so we were forced to have a break, so I went to the spa and
Oh my
relaxed for a couple
gosh.
days, but otherwise, it was just so jam-packed, but they have
No,
the most
this
fun
one's 9
itineraries.
days 9 days going to and from Barcelona, and then also with stops in Cadiz, Spain, Lisbon, Portugal, Porto, Portugal, and 1 day in Tangier, Morocco. So,
Ooh, that's gonna be
I
great.
feel
I
like
would
it's a
love to go
pretty
to
good
Morocco.
itinerary, and it's gonna be
Yeah.
pretty good.
I
Yeah.
love that. Ours, we started in Athens and ended in Rome. So we stopped in Istanbul and Kushadasi, and then down through the Greek Isles, and then over to Italy, and then ended in Rome. So it was one way. We started in Athens a few days ahead of time, and then stayed in Rome a few days after. So it was a fun
That
experience.
sounds really cool.
It was
That
just
sounds like
really
a
a
really
lot.
cool itinerary too. Yeah.
Istanbul was so incredible. I didn't really know what to expect, and it's now like one of my favorite places. I can't wait to go back. Um, just the history of Istanbul is incredible, and it's been through so much change. I mean, it was there like in biblical times, and it's there now. And the churches used to be Christian churches, and now they're Muslim mosques. But the Muslims believe that they want to honor all the heart of history, so they don't cover any of the Christian markings up inside these mosques. And so when you go, you still have like Mary and Jesus, and you have the Muslim writing. It's just this chaotic, like, beautiful, like, honoring everything experience, and so I just
Mhm.
was not prepared for, like, how much to take in there was, and so that was That was one of my favorite stops, surprisingly, but, yeah, it was really cool. But
Yeah, that's
back to
cool.
that.
I don't know, for some reason, Turkey hasn't ever been on my bucket list, but maybe I'll have to add it.
Yeah,
I
oh,
don't
and
know.
the food, mwah, so
Is it
good.
really good?
So good. But that's one thing that's fun about cruising too, is even though you're only in town for 1 day, sometimes 2 days, kinda just gives you a peek at somewhere you may not have gone.
Yeah.
And you can decide if you wanna go back and spend more time, and, so that's really cool. Well, I'm excited. I can't wait to hear about your cruise when you get back. What would you say, is the biggest lesson you've learned about yourself through travel?
I would say that I actually am a lot more open-minded to unique experiences, to trying food that maybe I would have thought before, "Ew, who wants to eat that?" You know, that I'm just, I'm more open to some of the crazy things than maybe I would have thought that I would have been, you know?
Do you find that you're more open to that while you're traveling than you're at home? Like, you're not gonna be in Utah thinking, like, "I really want blood pudding right now," like, but I will eat
Yes,
it
I'm
somewhere
definitely
else.
more open to it when I'm traveling, absolutely.
What's the craziest thing you've tried to eat?
Oh, couple things I would say, honestly, maybe escargot in France.
Yeah. What do you think? I think it just tastes, like, chewy and whatever sauce it's in, right? Kinda like buttery garlic.
It just tastes like oil and garlic because that's basically what they put in it.
Yeah,
Otherwise, the
that's what I
actual
think too.
escargot just tastes kind of like chicken or beef or turkey or just like a regular meat, it doesn't taste any different than
Just kinda chewy. I feel like they always put, like, a lot
yeah,
of fennel or something, fennel and garlic, and it tastes kinda like that, but then
yeah,
I think it's the thought of it that is an issue.
yeah, exactly,
Did
but
you
it's
try
not really
haggis
that.
in Scotland?
I did not. I was only there for 2 days, and I was actually in Amsterdam working for 2 weeks because that's where the headquarters for my work is, so they had put me up in the corporate apartment, and I was in Amsterdam, and I decided to go spend one of my weekends in Scotland. 'Cause it
Gotcha.
was a pretty easy trip over there, and there was, it wasn't like I felt like if I went there that I would miss out. I was able to go see the castle and, the museums and some of the big things, but I don't know if even if I'd have wanted it, I don't know how I could have found I mean, I actually got so busy trying to run around, do other things that I only even ate out once the whole
Oh my
time I was
gosh.
there. The rest of the time I was just, like, snacking on stuff, so
Yeah.
it was on
Edinburgh's
a Sunday morning breakfast, so I wasn't about to go that wouldn't have been the time to try
oh, yeah, it
haggis.
doesn't sound appropriate, does it?
No, so I stuck with your typical I think it was like an avocado toast thing with eggs and bacon, and it was like a normal, like, something that you eat at home in the States too.
Yeah. My kids make fun of me because I eat avocado toast everywhere I go at least one time, and they're like, "Well, exploring the world one avocado toast at a time." I'm like, "That's me." You gotta try
Oh,
it
that's funny.
because it's a good, like, comfort food, and I want it. So
Yeah, it was good, and this place had really good yeah, it was really good.
that's awesome. So, in closing, I just wanna thank you for hanging out with us and for talking to us. I think that, a lot of people are gonna be able to relate to how you feel with your, autoimmune issues and being able to kind of just travel your plan around that, and I love the insight that if it's something you really wanna do, definitely find a way to make it work. Do you have any final words of encouragement for women to get out there and go? Or just do it?
I
Just
would say just do it and realize that, it's not gonna be as big a deal as you think. There are ways to get accommodations, there's ways to do it, and even as a solo traveler, you can do it. I mean, if you really don't wanna be totally alone, there's lots of companies that offer group trips, and you can sign up for a group trip and go on one
yeah.
as a solo traveler. So, it isn't as complicated or as hard, I think, as people think it is.
Wink, wink. I offer, group trips for women, so you could hit me up if you wanna go. We'll figure something out. So, where can our listeners find you? I know you have your podcast. Go ahead and tell us about that. If you have a
I do. So
website.
my podcast is Autoimmune Rehab. It's on like all the places, Apple, Spotify, whatever. I stream it from my blog too, so we'll link to it. I also did self-publish an ebook on Kindle on budget travel to France, so we can link that too, so people can go check it out. It has a
Yeah,
lot of really good juicy tips about how to go to France on a budget and enjoy yourself without spending all the money from the kitchen sink.
I
And
love
yeah,
that.
there we go.
Well, I'll put those links in the descriptions for everyone, and then you guys can follow Anna Laura, and I'm definitely gonna go find that book for sure because I love that idea. So thank you for being with us. I appreciate you, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks so much for listening to Go Far Girl. If this episode made you smile, dream a little bigger, or realize it's never too late to book the trip, I'd be so grateful if you'd share it with a friend. And hey, we've got an amazing group of women waiting for you inside our Facebook community. Just search Go Far Girl. Come on in and say hi. And until next time, keep exploring, keep growing, and never stop going far.